Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday edition of the Xbox Factor podcast. I am your host, Mr. Boomstick XL, and as you can see, I have my Christmas t-shirt on, and it is, yes, a Stormtrooper, because why not? It's Christmas in July, and thanks to Mrs. Boomstick, we will be giving away $175 worth of gift cards today, and all you gotta do is go to my Twitter account, retweet the comment Christmas in July that I put out there, and the hashtag is the Xbox Factor podcast giveaway, and I will be picking a winner by topic number 3 like we did on Tuesday, and that is for one $100 Xbox gift card, one $50 Xbox gift card, and one $25 Xbox gift card, all compliments of Mrs. Boomstick, who wanted to give back to this community that has given us so much. And folks, I have been out here advertising this show. It is going to be a spicy one indeed, especially when we get to the topic of controller for the Xbox. Does it need to be more like or have features like the PlayStation 5 Dual Sense? And to be honest with you, it seems that most Xbox gamers do not want change, but you know what? I'm not one of them, to be honest with you. And if you disagree, well, that is what we're here to talk about. Let's get into the introductions, and we're going to start first, making his return all the way from the other side of the world. You know him as Boxer Bear, but I know him, and I think the community knows him as Boxin' Burger. Archimedes, welcome back, brother.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be back. Sorry, I had to bail on last week's show. Something at work had came up, but I'm glad to be back. Even though we have a dry streak in news, you always come up with such fantastic topics to discuss gaming, and that's what I'm here for. I love the discussions we have on this panel with VJ, with Josh, and Joe is most certainly joining very soon, so I can't wait to discuss everything today.
Yeah, you know what? Joe should be here momentarily. He was in the DMs, so I would imagine that he's going to be joining us. And honestly, I really do hope he gets here, because he is going to be the voice of reason as someone that represents the PlayStation brand in the most proper manner possible. I think he's going to have the most relevant opinion regarding what some DualSense features could look like for an Xbox controller. And again, you know, obviously we're going to get into that, but making his return, someone that is, I consider to be the biggest brain of the panel, someone that always puts his words together in the biggest way possible. VJ, welcome back, bro. How you feeling?
I thought you was introducing Josh there for a minute. Yeah, no, I'm all good, Boom. I'm really looking forward to the show. And I just want to echo Archimedes' sentiment in terms of the great topics and how they've got my brain churning this morning. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, you know what? I mean, obviously, when you have 4 shows, which we do have, and 2 of which are Xbox Factor podcast programs each and every week, you got to keep things fresh. You got to keep things interesting. And to be quite honest, I enjoy writing about games and producing these shows. So thank you so much for the compliment. Josh, N64 Josh, obviously the newest addition to this Thursday edition of the Xbox Factor podcast. How the heck are you, brother? And welcome back.
So glad to be here. And thank you. Thank you, Boom. It's been an exciting week. I mentioned last week I went to work for a game dev called Beamable, and I launched the Beamable Game Dev podcast. Like,
nice.
we have a show now, and so
nice.
It's been a very exciting week, and I'm so glad to be here and talk Xbox. And I got to hold the PS5 controller and feel the adaptive triggers for the first time. So I'm excited to chat.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Sony has, for the most part, in 4 iterations. Now, this is now the 5th with the DualShock controller, has done very little to innovate. But again, we're not going to get so much into that, because we're gonna come back around to that comment as we wait for people to file in. And but you know what? I do want to open up with a small topic. Now, this one is certainly not the biggest one. But it goes to show you that when talking about class and the way how to handle and diffuse the console war shenanigans, I want to focus your attention on a topic that middle-aged gamer guy actually found from Primetime Gaming, and it concerns Xbox and the PlayStation trolls of the community. And this is what the official Xbox Twitter account had to say to the people. And this is pretty interesting. And again, not a big topic to start it off because we're still waiting people to file in. But I want to get people's opinion on this, because if there's one thing that we can admit, and that we've gone on this particular show on record as saying, is the whoever's in charge of the media aspect of Xbox is doing an incredible job. So here's what the official Xbox Twitter account had to say. To the people in our reply saying PlayStation 5 is better, well, they responded by simply saying the best console is the one you enjoy playing. Have fun. And they followed that with the positivity will continue until the discourse improves. Now, again, very simple words, but something that you would rarely find anyone from Nintendo or PlayStation doing to interact with the community. Also, not feeding the trolls with going after them, but simply saying, hey, listen, the best console is whatever you enjoy playing. Archimedes, what I mean, again, not a big topic, but something that I think is worthy of a conversation, considering how they've been handling Xbox media, both online and in the socials. What are your thoughts on this?
I mean, what else is there to add? They said it all. I really like the social media team of Xbox lately. They put out really positive tweets. They always have that how do you express that in English? Manner when they launch when Sony launches a game, they congratulate them. When they put out record numbers, they comment that in a positive way, and they just encourage the community to enjoy gaming. And that's really awesome to see, that it's not just, it is a competitive market. They are competitors, and we all know that Xbox is also sometimes taking little shots at Sony, but in the end, they really try to not fuel the console war, and this is really awesome to see. I like that social media team, because let's face it, it's what sometimes it's just so annoying when you're out on social media, Twitter especially, the negativity with what you have to deal when you say something positive or negative about Xbox or PlayStation or Nintendo. Or lately, I posted about me having some problems getting a certain PC game to run, and then suddenly the PC Master Race fans came out and came at me, and it's sometimes just so annoying. And to see that that Microsoft is trying to spread the positivity around it is just great to see.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? It's very unfortunate that when you reach out to the community, instead of you get a helping hand, you get someone to fling crap, and that's very disappointing, especially from the so-called PC Master Race. You would imagine that they're supposed to be the elite of the elite, and to handle themselves in such a manner the way they did with you is disgraceful. I'll go out and say that right now. And again, I don't want to throw everybody under an umbrella, because it's not everybody in the PC Master Race. But
no, definitely not.
It's disappointing when that kind of stuff happens. But I have to say, to see the Xbox account respond almost instantaneously to this, I think just goes to show you that they are really have made a complete 180, as opposed to how they started in early 2013 with the Xbox One, where they said things that they always seemed like they were tongue-tied. And this seems to be either a new social media team, or one that is properly trained in how to handle working with the people. But whatever they're doing over there, it's been fantastic.
And it's not just the social media team, it's the executives themselves as
Yes.
well. They handle social media so well. No other platform holder does it like Microsoft does it.
No.
Yeah, you see Phil Spencer, Aaron Greenberg, Larry Herb, and
Even
so on.
Sarah Bond has
even
been.
Sarah Bond has now a
Yes.
Twitter account. Yes.
Yes, it's awesome.
And it's also not easy for them to handle social media properly, because you know how quickly you can make a short comment that was tweeted in a bad mood or whatever, and suddenly it comes back at you. So it's really risky to be on social media for an executive. Yeah,
I agree.
So and they handle it really well. Like you said, Boom, it's a different Microsoft. It's a different Xbox than we had in 2013 and before that.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I really do like how, like I said, Sarah Bond, whom I'm a huge fan of. And for me personally, I actually put it out there. Someone had put like, what are your wishes? Interviewing her is definitely one on my high list. I don't think I'm ever going to get it on this channel, but listen, I never thought I would have almost 9,000 subs, and here we are. I got almost 9,000 subs. So who knows? Dreams do come true. She's certainly an interview that I'm looking forward to, and potentially will hopefully one day get. But VJ, I want to grab. I want to grab your opinion on this, but before I do, I have to catch up on super chats. And the first one comes from my brother Neo Mental in the chat, and he drops an outstanding $5 jet and says, "Yeah, the whole show on how wrong you can be on a subject. SMH hashtag leave my elite alone." See, listen, I love my brother, but this is where he's wrong. He likes the Elite Controller 2.0 the way it is. Good on you. But I disagree with you. I think that we need some Dual Sense type controller elements. And you know something? Phil Spencer thinks so as well. But we're going to get into what he had to say a little later in the show. Chaos Might drops an additional drops a very generous $5 jet and says Microsoft needs to add gyro to the controller for more precision aiming. Oh, that's interesting. I never even thought about that. That's a great point, dude. And thank you for the super chat. And we had Philly Eagle, our generous brother and longtime supporter of Double Barrel Gaming, drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says, "There is no console war." Hold on a sec. Where are you, Philly? There you go. There are only fools arguing on social media, and us gamers laugh at their stupidity. I like that. Hashtag keep the positivity.
That's a good approach.
That's a great approach, brother. And hashtag enjoy this hobby. Indeed, my brother. VJ, listen, you have been fortunate to be a part of the industry, not just as a gamer, but in the business of making games and also in the business of selling games. And when you see Microsoft, who has done some amazing things with their social media presence, make a statement like this, what does this say to the rest of the industry that is watching?
I'm going to take a little bit of a macro perspective, like not just focusing on the tweet, even though it's a good step forward. For my sins, I do observe and listen to certain sort of PlayStation-centric channels to better understand the nature of the individuals that are quite visceral, Boom, or instinctively reluctant towards Xbox and Microsoft. And I do it because, A, they are intelligent people, but not without a steadfast personal preference, but more so in order to sort of, sorry about the aeroplane. Yeah, it's flight simulator landing earlier, but more so in order to think about how I would devise a long-term strategy to help change or alter unpopular opinion or mindsets. Xbox have been, for me, in the past at least, sort of, and I've said this on your channel, sort of sometimes slightly alienating a user group, right? A huge user group besides their own, rather than sort of showing everyone in a I don't know if benevolence the right word, but in a benevolent manner, right? Which is key for me, what they're doing to improve and take the industry as a whole, which we, the community, and a large part, and are a large part of it, as well as all other gamers on all other formats, to take them forward. What I mean by that, everyone included. And for me, this has got to be the best baseline approach, right? Because obviously there's many strategies and tactics involved, right, in growing your business. And I've clearly said many times that Xbox need to present themselves in a fashion that rises above the shallow tit for tat schoolgirl remarks. Sorry, I should probably use better words, but that's what came to me. And especially when they're sort of, and we've seen it on occasion, so I'm not going to shy away from saying it, but aim towards Sony or Nintendo. And thus what you're doing by doing that is also including their fan base in the process. And I've seen it on occasion, on more often than I'd like to. And it makes me feel uncomfortable, to truth be told. Sometimes it's in tweets, and sometimes it's been in interviews that Phil's had. And if I might be so bold to say, I feel Xbox from time to time are lacking a master tactician in this part of their division. And perhaps, as you say, Boom, you've and I'm not on Twitter as much as you, so I'm going to take your word for it in terms of that you've seen a noticeable positive change or a change in general in terms of how Xbox PR and marketing are approaching social media and the population, globally, because obviously that's their customer base and that's their target for this gen. So, and what I mean by that, a tactician, sort of a smart tactician, a master tactician, overcomes an opponent not by directly engaging or antagonizing the opposition or its sort of loyal and invested subjects, as I mentioned, these sort of PlayStation-centric channels. And if at all possible, I'm not saying it's always avoidable, but that should be the baseline approach. And some may feel this tweet that's just come out, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before or a few days ago, so forgive me, is a marked change in strategy and for the better. I would say that there's still a long way to go, but and perhaps sometimes I think Xbox should bite their tongue, and pause verbally, when inclined to sort of defend yourself publicly and judge the merit of perhaps what you're about to say. Sometimes I think that silence is the best approach or the best answer in certain circumstances, and perhaps focus on being an exemplary model that everyone respects, not just your current fan base. And for Xbox, in this case, we know it's going to take time. And during that time, and we talked about it last week, that they are going to be pointed at, they are going to be ridiculed for people that are in, that come across as if they're extremely knowledgeable, but they're not really seeing the wood for the trees, especially in the longer term. And perhaps sometimes, as we see on Twitter, Xbox are sometimes violently opposed, because, not physically, but, sometimes depending on the intent of how you use a specific word, there is an anger and a violence behind it, right? You can feel the vibration sometimes. But unfortunately, that's the shallow grave that Xbox have dug for themselves, but they're doing their absolute best to come out of it. And you have to say there's an incredible amount of work that has been done ever since the announcement, I would say, of so long ago now, Boom. It was at the end of 2019 when they announced the Series X, and you've seen a sea of change. And as I say, there's a lot of work still to be done if a sea of change is to occur, and for Sony and Nintendo fans to become far more positive and inclined towards the Xbox brand. Everyone knows that, I would say that realistically, outward behavior, especially on Twitter, and commentary on there is, I kind of best put it, is often, if not mostly, superficial. And I think it's smart, instead of sort of riling up, your PlayStation fans or Nintendo fans or PC fans or whatever you're inclined towards, with any sort of counter swipe or taking the high ground, as they've seemingly attempted on social media. Sometimes, as I say, on interviews and tweets in the past, in my eyes at least, it's kind of left me feeling a bit uncomfortable at the naivety. And as I say, there are always better moves that can be made on the board, bringing everyone into alignment. And I think that's what Phil's ethos is, right? What his plan is, right? While still messaging and driving your advantage. I'm not saying don't do that, and I'm just saying that every time a tweet goes out, I think a lot of consideration and thought needs to go into it, right? And I think that perhaps this is probably one of the key components of change that have probably occurred in the Microsoft Xbox PR team. And for me, Boom, whenever anyone has anything to say against Microsoft, they should just keep it really simple. And for me, from the year that I've been on the show with you, simply state and evoke in a PR message or interview that, look, Xbox has been around for 20 years. It's here to stay. And while we're investing heavily in order to meet expectations, we offer compelling choice, options, price, and quality, accessibility for existing gamers, communities, and global audiences at large. And it's simple as that. And no matter, and I would add to that, sorry, Ben, which I've said before, is that no matter what your preference or the walk of life you come from, especially if you're targeting sort of 3 billion odd gamers. I'm not an expert sort of in any shape, way or form, but as I say, if you desire a sea change, you need to look at the team driving the change. And I've said before, and I want to stay consistent at least. And I've come across the fact that some Xbox are past their prime, and freshening up isn't a bad thing. Boom! If you look right across nature, it's part and parcel of it. And I'm going to stop there before I start offering examples and stuff. But as I say, there is a cultural, inspirational communication equation that you can clearly see that's been looked at, right? And not just domestically, boom, but it's got to be overseas as well. And as I say, via somewhat a more benevolent approach, and therefore an ethos change and a growth needed behind the scenes. And for me, regardless of the tweet, there's always room for improvement, especially if you want to lead individuals. And I've talked about this before, or a generation or a new generation of an existing and new generation of gamers in this case on a mass scale that Phil is and Microsoft are pursuing. And they must first respect you for what you stand for before they begin to follow you. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
I mean, great points as always, Josh. As someone that has recently took a job in PR for a particular entity, hearing this response from the official Xbox account, and I mean, again, they're not shouting out anyone in particular. They could have easily just started naming people, but they simply said that if you enjoy the PlayStation and that's your favorite console, basically good on you. How do you think that response was?
I don't see anything wrong with it myself, because it's acknowledging the trolls,
yes,
but not really feeding them.
Yes, I like that. Yes,
it acknowledges them, and I don't know, maybe just the fact that they let them know they're heard. Maybe that can mean something.
Honestly, for me, that response completely diffuses the whole situation.
And it does because I mean, it does no good for any of us to engage.
Correct.
With these people, right? Like, it's usually anime avatars. Like, they're pretty.
I like that. That's funny. You're onto something.
I mean, it's faceless. They just, at the end of the day, they're looking for the ratio. Which is just so it's so ridiculous that, like, why are you wasting time on Twitter for a ratio? Go play your PlayStation that you enjoy so much.
Play games.
Go play the games. Agree. Like, do something with your life. Go start a PlayStation podcast and hang out with that community and I don't know, just do something positive. That's kind of where, and you can see that's what Xbox is pushing towards. It's something positive, right? And I love that they're different than Nintendo and PlayStation, that they don't just play the corporate, PR, just like everything needs to be, approved 7 times before this goes out, and, make sure the copy is exactly as it is. Like, of course there's approval. I mean, I've sat and listened to like Clubhouse chats about like the Xbox fridge and the leak of the Series S and all that kind of stuff. And the team, the leadership allows that team to do their job.
Yes.
Right. And they do that job well.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, we're sitting here talking about it. That tweet got major traction. Right. So
yes, it did.
From the business side, again, it was, I mean, you saw so many people quoting that thing and just saying, yeah, I think my tweet just said this, right? Like this, like enjoy what you want. Just enjoy things. Like that's really the message here. Just enjoy something. Enjoy something that's not trying to bring people down or cause somebody frustration or pain. Just go enjoy something. Was like, I think that was kind of just the underlying message there, and that's what's important. Like, we get to play video games.
Yeah.
You know, if
You know
can
what?
get on Twitter with your phone, you get to play games. Like, be thankful for that and enjoy it.
Well, you know what? What I want to do, and I'm calling an audible here, because I see a lot of people talking about it in the chat. I have to talk about Death's Door. This is a game that maybe a lot of people on the panel haven't got a chance to play. And the reason why I want to talk about it for a couple of minutes is it just goes to show you the kind of games that continue to come to Xbox, regardless of size, in a big way. Now, for anyone that follows me knows that I'm not a Souls guy, right? It's just the difficulty for me is just over my head as a gamer, and the frustration that comes with it, I just rather not. You know what I'm saying? And there are some games that I've played that I've enjoyed significantly that are Souls-like games that are not Soul games. And Death's Door happens to be one of them. I'm going to tell you this right now. This is a $20 game made by two people. And I cannot begin to tell you that it is. See, that's the thing. A lot of people are comparing this to a Souls type game. Now, granted, it has some elements, but for me, being an old school G, you know what I'm saying? Like I grew up with how difficult Zelda was back in the days, and Metroid and Kid Icarus and things of that nature. It has more of a Zelda and Metroid feel than it does an actual Souls game. Now, granted, I've seen people say they've died 100 times. Somebody dropped a super chat and said he's still stuck at the first boss. I only died once at the first boss. And to be honest, and I'm tooting my own horn here because I'm not a Souls guy, I only died half a dozen times, and I'm 4 hours into the game. Very cautious how I play. I take my time. I'm enjoying it. But I got to tell you, I'm not getting anything for trying to sell this game. You know, the folks that made it, they don't know who Boomstick is, which is fine. It's Acid something that made the game. It's so good. It has no right to be as good as it is, folks. That's how good it is. And I think it's still on sale. I paid 18 and change. It was like 10% off of a $20 game. The game is, they say 8 to 10 hours. I kind of think it's going to be a little bit longer than that, especially if you like secrets like me. Like I'm going back because there's certain things. Again, this is where the Metroid reference comes from. I found a couple of things that allows me to start fires, which I didn't have before, and I'm going back to see if I could find some more secrets. It's phenomenal. I'm gonna just get the the opinion of the chat. Of course, I want to hear what you guys and gals have to say, but I want to get the panel's opinion. Boxer Bear, I know you said that you haven't played it yet, but you've seen it. Does this game interest you?
Oh, 100%. 100%. There's just another good reason why I don't have the time right now to play it.
Yeah.
No, I bought it. It's sitting on my Xbox waiting for me to be played. And I will probably start it really soon.
Yeah.
And can't wait. I love difficult games. I love the challenge. I love Zelda. I love Metroid. There's everything in there that I like in a game. So I can't wait to play it.
Yeah, it's definitely something everyone should take the time if you're a fan of those types of games. And like I said, if you're a fan of Zelda, Metroid, Souls, it's something for everyone. Again, I can't stop. I literally went to bed thinking about it, woke up thinking about it. That's how the game has me personally. Josh, as someone that streams, besides all the other jobs that you have now that you got hired, Is this a game that interests you personally? Does the difficulty kind of scare you off?
No, difficulty doesn't. No, difficulty does not scare me off. Games like we talked about, Ninja Gaiden, Cuphead,
Yes.
Contra from back in the day.
So good.
Like those games don't bother me at all. I love the challenge. I love just how satisfying it is to finally complete difficult games. Like I really enjoy it. What was that Cyber Shadow that just came out? I loved that. Like that. I mean, it's been out for a couple months now, but it's been a busy game in releases, or a busy week.
Usually the summer is dead. Not anymore.
Yeah,
yes.
not this week. Splitgate, has kind of gained a bunch of attention, and Pokemon Unite launched yesterday on the Switch. And so honestly, I planned on trying Death's Door yesterday. That's the name, right? Death's Door. I want to make sure.
Yeah, Death's Door. Yes.
Yeah. And then Pokemon Unite came out. So I ended up making some shorts about that. Today I'm doing Splitgate. I think tomorrow will be Death's Door. So I can get a chance to play it.
Yeah, it's I think you're gonna dig it, especially because you appreciate some of the old school games that you mentioned. It's going to be, I think, right up your alley for sure. VJ, let's get your opinion on this, brother. Where do you fall with difficult games? Does Death's Door, is that something that you would try? Again, first of all, the price is it's one of those games that's worth its price of admission simply because it's a $20 game that's going to give at least 20 hours worth of play, especially if you're someone like me that enjoys finding secrets and leveling up. Where do you fall with this game?
It's difficult. I mean, I don't know. I've started to think about games from the 90s and how difficult Ghouls and Ghosts used to be. But I mean, I suppose the most difficult game I played this year is Hollow Knight. So I don't know where that ranks as in terms of a difficult game.
But that's definitely a difficult game.
That's definitely, yeah.
And I got about 108% in that game. So I pretty much completed most of it. And but I think, Boom, there's two things for me. Is that I think I mentioned Sekiro, and the only difficult thing I found about that game was the load times. So. But I wanted to keep playing it. But I think it's purely down to the magic of the game itself. If it engages your imagination, whether you're grinding or whether you're trying to overcome a difficult boss or a level or a platform, I think if the game engages me, or my imagination, I should say, then I'm all in. There's no issues whatsoever. I'm not familiar with the game that you've mentioned, but I've made a note of it.
If you enjoy a game's difficulty, and again, this is not overly difficult. It's a lot of timing. It's a lot of patience. This is another big W for Devolver Digital. I know that you spend a lot of time with our very good friend, the Indie Gamer, and he's constantly talking about Devolver Digital.
Yeah.
Again, they saw this game from Acid Nerve, who is a two-man team that made this game. And it doesn't look like it. It's one of those games that I think everyone should definitely check out. I highly recommend it. And again, I'm not getting a dime for it, but I have to sell this game for them because I think this is something special. I would even dare say, and I know I get it, there's so many indie games that have released that are also still coming that are good. I think that, again, we'll be talking about this in December. This year's Game of the Year is going to consist of at least half a dozen, maybe even more than that, indie titles. I think the indie scene has really exploded on the scene, and 2021 is going to be a perfect representation of that. I mean, we still have Kena for the PlayStation. We still have the Ascent. We have
I was just going to say is that, look, maybe I'm just speaking for myself, but I saw that Last Stop is coming to Game Pass, and I have to
this
tell
month.
you,
Yes,
and I have to tell you, it's a game I've been talking to Indie Gamer for a long time, and I'm so pleased it's coming to Game Pass. I know it's not on everybody's radar, but I thought I'd give it a mention.
Oh, Zemi Games has been talking up that game on the other Xbox Factor podcast for months. I would even say that he talked about it last year. It's again, it's one of those games like Tunic, that's coming. That again, one man's making that game. I played the demo, absolutely loved it. If you're an old school Zelda fan, you will definitely love that. There's just so much to look forward to. But yeah, I kind of wanted just to talk about Death's Door for a hot second, and then we'll get back to the main topic. Mr. Badbit is unfortunately not going to be joining us. He had to take his dog to the vet. Something happened. So obviously, real life, folks, your pets are part of your family. So he's said he's going to try and be here by the end when we are talking about the Dual Sense versus the Xbox Series X controller, which would be perfect timing. Pong Soul is going to be joining us momentarily, but I got to catch up on the super chats. And my God, there's been a ton of them. Vogelskrieg, good friend of the show, he drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says Sarah Bond has had her Twitter account for many years, but she has recently started being active. Yeah, which is awesome. And again, it just goes to show you when you look at what Sony is doing and what Nintendo is doing, as opposed to Microsoft's, high-ranking people within the company, it's literally night and day. And she's just another addition to an already stellar presence that Microsoft, or more so Xbox, has. And again, she's a great addition to the team. I'm happy that she's out there, in the socials, interacting with the people. I think that's absolutely fantastic. We have Don Otaku drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, finally caught you guys live, even though I should be asleep. Gyro controls, controller features that need most, especially with their shooter focus. Indeed. So you're the second one to say that. And dude, I'm glad that you're up. And we have Horace drops a very generous $5 chat and says, I'm one of your new subs. Oh, dude, welcome to the channel, brother. He says, I first stumbled across your channel 4 weeks ago, and now I can't wait for the next show. Love all of your content. Much love to you and the missus. Well, dude, thank you for the very, very generous and kind words. I am honestly, as much as we appreciate the super chats, it's the comments that really stand out. It's, because sometimes, it's the interwebs. You're not always going to get nice people. And I'm going to be honest with you. For the most part, I don't really get negative comments because I'm not really negative. I think if anyone's going to say anything, they'd say, boom, you're too damn positive. You make me sick. And I've had that happen too. But thanks for the compliment. Thank you for the super chat. And Drawn TJ drops a very generous $5 super chat, says, good morning, Boom. I hope you guys have an awesome day. Well, thank you, dude, for being here as always. Thank you for the generosity. And I hope you have an amazing day as well. Dan the Man Cunningham drops a very generous $5 super chat and says, what does that sign say? ELE, everyone love everyone. And or everyone love everybody. I like that. Damn it. Good OLE semi-pro. Yeah, dude, listen. Why not be just love everybody? That's what I say. I say, that it's better than hate for sure. Scrub Nurse, who is recovering. Dude, I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad you didn't hurt yourself. He took a stumble on his bike and he showed it on Twitter. That looked painful as F. But I'm glad that you're here, and I'm glad that hopefully you're feeling better. He drops a $2 super chat and says, only thing needed on the Elite controller is Design Lab. See, you're right there with my brother Neo Mental. Who's wrong? But you know what? That's what brothers do. We disagree. And Dan, I know you're listening. I love you. We have let's see. We have Caper Grant 692 drops a very generous $10 super chat and says, good afternoon, Boom and panel. Well, good afternoon to you, Caper. Appreciate you being here, but of course, I appreciate the very generous $10 super chat. And Gerald Mack, another generous friend of the show, he drops an outstanding $5 super chat and says, good morning to the superstar panel, Mr. Boomstick and friends. You guys are awesome. Love the work. Love what you do for the community. Well, Gerald, thank you so much for that, brother. And appreciate you being here. Stubbs Gaming. I think you might know who that is, VJ. He drops an outstanding $2 super chat and says, I hope VJ is keeping cool with cold tea. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's hot as hell. It's actually not so bad here. It's only 84 in New York, which isn't bad. We have to welcome in Pong Soul. Pong, what's up, brother? How you feeling?
Good morning, everybody. Look, I'm sitting at home today out of the blue working, and all of a sudden the double barrel gaming bat signal goes up, and I got to respond. So I'm
well,
here.
we appreciate it, brother. You are the busiest man going. We had you on Tuesdays, obviously, which is with where you are normally. But you know what? We were down one man, and I figured we might as well bring in a superhero, and here you are, brother. Well, thank you so much for being here. I definitely appreciate that. As we close in on 300 people here, I want to move on to, well, this is technically topic number 2, but it's 3 because I kind of threw the Death's Door conversation in, yeah, that's a game that's getting a lot of hype. I'm very excited for Acid Nerve. This is a 2-man team, and it looks like not only are they winning on the socials, not only are they winning in the Metacritic, which again no one really gives a flying F about, but it's still important for smaller devs. And the fact that a 2-man team made what people are already talking about, Game of the Year 2021, that's something to be said. And I'm very happy for that 2-man team. And of course,
hey, Boom, I don't know if anybody talked about it because I was doing work and getting into this, but Last Stop dropped last night on Game Pass, or early this morning.
Well,
from Annapurna.
I did not know that it dropped today.
Yes. I actually played through one of the chapters last night of one of the characters. Do not sleep on this game. I'm not a normally heavy, with narrative driven games, they're hit or miss for me.
Is it kind of like an episode of The Outer Limits?
Kind of, yes. From what I'm gathering, it's going to have it's got a cast of different characters that you play as, and their stories kind of intertwine. And it's narrative driven. You are controlling from a third person, but it's got mini games in it. But the first chapter that I played last night of one of the characters, really, really good. Actually really entertaining. So don't sleep on this, but it is available now. Annapurna always puts out great games, just like Devolver does. This is by Variable State is the developer, but Annapurna is the publisher. So everybody go check it out if you get a chance. It definitely looks like it's got some good stuff to it. So.
Well, I mean, listen, it's funny because VJ literally just mentioned that. But there you go, folks. The Last Stop. I know Zemi is probably playing that right now as we speak, which is awesome. And he's been definitely looking forward to that title for certain. Look, I want to move on to the next topic, and I'm actually happy that you're here, Pong, because you're an old school cat like myself. And one of the things that I enjoy doing when writing these shows is getting the community involved, right? And 2 particular tweets came across my timeline, and I told both guys that I said, listen, this is such an intriguing and thought-provoking conversation you have brought to me that I'm going to bring this up. I'm going to write an original topic, and that's what we're going to head on to topic number 3. Now, SSST Roscoe Gaming, who is in the chat, he wrote a tweet and says this: Xbox really needs a studio like Bluepoint so they can revive older IPs. At least I think it'd be good for fans of these older IPs. I raised my hand right here. And then was a follow-up tweet by the Night Beard. And it's at Angus McDuff on Twitter. He says a remake/remaster studio would be really important long-term. Now, here's the thing, folks. I look at the Xbox as an entire entity, not just a halo or just the pillars that keep the box up, right? I like to look at where we came from. And it's something that I've talked about on the show many times before. It's something that both Nintendo and Sony celebrate, and they do it well. Specifically Sony, because they do work with Bluepoint to bring older IPs brought back in a new way. And we just saw Demon's Souls for the PlayStation 5 as a launch title, and that obviously got rave reviews. Many people in the PlayStation community cheered on Demon's Souls because remember, it's only had one, so this is a remake of the original. But we've seen Bluepoint bring back Shadow of the Colossus, which was a masterpiece. It was gorgeous. Now the controls, they were a little tough, but whatever. But they worked on the PlayStation 4 version of Flower, which again, very, very niche type of title. We've seen them work on the Metal Gear Solid HD collection. We've seen them do the Gravity Rush remaster, which they actually did Titanfall for the Xbox 360. But this is what I want to grab the panel's opinion, and of course the chat as well, as we cross 300 people here. For me, there are currently so many older IPs that Microsoft has that are laying dormant. As a matter of fact, Crimson Skies has just entered the fray in one of the games being added to Game Pass this July. And Crimson Skies is a perfect example of an old game that could potentially be brought back in a semi-big way, not an HD remaster. I mean, go in there and remake this game from the ground up. If you've never played it, it still looks incredible, and the game is over 20 years old. It was a launch title for the OG Xbox. So, Pong, being that you jumped in here, do you agree that Microsoft either needs to create from the ground up a studio that could bring us older games like a Conker, like a Cameo, like Banjo-Kazooie, because Jesus Christ, I'm still going to keep beating this drum. Phil, if you're listening, Sarah, somebody, if you're listening, what is the holdup here? I mean, I get it with Killer Instinct. You don't have a studio. Well, you can go buy one. I'm not going to give you my money because you don't need it. But honestly, Pong, do they need a Bluepoint Studios of their own?
Yes, I believe they do. I'm guilty as much as any of us older people, older gamers, whatever you want to say, are of living in nostalgia. I fall into that category very easily. But I think there is a real missed opportunity when you don't have a studio or studios to go back through your back catalog and refresh some of the classics and some of the beloved franchises. Now, of course, there's the business aspect that's involved. Yes. How many people actually, out of all the people that, that yell for something to be remade or to be brought back, how many of those people actually go out and buy it and support it? That's always the biggest question. You got to be real careful, because obviously it's not as simple as just going back and saying, okay, we're just going to flip a switch and bring this forward and everything's going to be perfect. That's not how this works. You got to have a studio who understands, a lot like Bluepoint obviously does, what it takes to do that, and how, you carefully have to manage, keeping the old feel of the game, but somehow modernizing it so that new people as well can enjoy it. And even some of the older people, as we go back to some of the older games and backwards compatibility, there's some that hold up and there's some that you go back to and it's like, yeah, this thing's feeling the age. This isn't the best in the control scheme. This isn't, the greatest looking game anymore. And you got to balance those two out. So that you don't lose the game. Otherwise, you're just creating a brand new game all over again, and you're going to lose that nostalgia feeling that a lot of people would come and buy, because we want to revisit those worlds again, or we want to experience those feelings again. So I think it is important. I think it is a missed opportunity if you don't have at least one studio like Bluepoint to at least investigate. You're never going to be able to go back and do the entire catalog all over again.
Of course not. Yeah,
right. But at the same time, to pick and choose out some fan favorites. Yes, exactly. I think that it is a missed opportunity, because I think there definitely is a market, and you just don't know that there is a whole group of people out there, just like we saw with the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, that never did get a chance to play those games because of age, or just where they were in life at that point. Yeah. And to be able to go back and bring in new fans of a series, I think that you may hit the lottery on one or two of those, where people go, wow, look at this, I forgot, and look at how great they did to bring this forward and modernize, and all of a sudden you got yourself another franchise that you can build off of once more. So I think it's worth the exploration. I definitely think it's worth having at least one studio doing some titles and seeing how it goes. Again, the business side of things, I get it. You can't just risk millions upon millions of dollars and time into a game to have it come out and you sell 10,000 copies. even though you had, the nostalgia was seemingly saying that there was going to be millions of people buying it, right? We can't do that either. That's not going to work. But for your big older titles, I think it's definitely worth it. I think Bluepoint has proven that. So I definitely think it's something that Microsoft, Xbox, Phil and his team should definitely be looking into investing in and finding the right group of people to do that. So I definitely think it's worth it.
Well, here's the thing. Here's an interesting theory. And again, folks, I'm just a guy with a small podcast. Most people don't give a shit what I have to say, right? And that's fine. That's fine. I completely hear you. I don't have the status quo of or following like an IGN or a Kotaku and whatever else. That's fine. But here's the thing. And bear with me. When you have 23 studios, right? Microsoft's talent pool is through the roof. Anyone that suggests otherwise, you're just not paying attention to what's going on in the class. So basically, in order to find a group of people, you work in a company, send a memo out. Anybody interested in reviving older IPs, we're looking to create a studio from within the talent we currently have, right? We're looking for project managers, this, that, and the third, and put the list out there. And get a small team of 20, 30, 40 people to come together to create a Bluepoint-esque type of team that will pick what game from the catalog that they're passionate about bringing them back. I mean, a good friend of the show, Jigger J, says that he wants to see Lost Odyssey. Now, that is something that has come into a conversation more times than not, because Lost Odyssey, quite frankly, was dope. And to get a remake of that would be awesome. But I just think that they have the means. They have the means because they have the personnel to do it. They just have to, obviously, create said team. Now, I know that we've seen Satya Nadella say, well, it's much easier to just buy a team. And that's probably true. But one of the biggest, I think, points of the conversation you made is the business aspect. And because of Xbox Game Pass, I think they could be a little more risque. Let's get Boxenberger's opinion on this. Again, now, Colt Eastwood, friend of this community, friend of this particular show, has constantly said that he would not want to see Banjo-Kazooie remade because it's taking talent away from making a new IP. And, of course, I disagree because I want Banjo-Kazooie, but I completely understand his point. With that said, they wouldn't have to choose if they had a dedicated team to bring said IP back, and you let them pick and choose, because that's what Bluepoint does. A lot of people don't understand. Sony doesn't beat them over the head and say, you know what, you're making this. Sony, like Sony has done before, what do you want to make? Well, we want to remake X. And they let them go crazy. And it takes 3 years, 5 years, whatever it is, but they remake it and it's something special. And unlike Sony, who is asking gamers, us in this circle right here, to pay $76.43 here in New York for their games, Microsoft would just drop it in the Game Pass and it would get millions of eyes and hands. What are your thoughts on that?
It sounds so beautiful if you phrase it like that. Listen, the thing is, I really like to play old games. I play some of my favorite games over and over again.
I'm playing through Psychonauts right now.
Awesome. I did that a few weeks ago. Still holds up very well, by the way. But the thing is, we have had this discussion on the show multiple times when we discussed, should we get a remake from Studio XY of game YZ? Yeah, that's a discussion we always have. And usually my answer is, I don't want to do a Ninja Theory, for instance, to waste their resources to not work on Hellblade 2 or Project Mara, instead doing a remaster of one of their games. So that's usually my take. I would take a new Banjo game anytime, but it has to be a new game. I don't want to have a remaster. I can play that via backcompat now.
Right, no, I agree. I think the remaster thing has run its course. I agree.
Yeah, exactly. But to have a dedicated team to really do good remakes is something that is awesome. Just
Yeah.
see what we had last year, the Mafia remake, an
So
incredible remake.
really
That is
good.
basically a new game. We have seen it with Demon Souls. Bluepoint has done it multiple times. Yeah, that's something that is awesome. And for Microsoft to have such a dedicated team, I would be in 110%. That is something awesome. That is not taking away the creative talents from new games. To have
Yes.
a studio that is just wants to do those type of games. Yeah. That's definitely something that would be cool, and there is a market for it. We have some classic games out there, some great games that are great because they brought something special to the table. May it be fantastic gameplay elements, a fantastic story, a special kind of immersion, something that pulled you in the game. We have some games out there. You mentioned Crimson Skies earlier. It's an amazing game. It has an incredible story in a genre where you usually don't get a story. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's very Indiana Jones-esque. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. But just as an example, yeah, to take such a game and make that properly with modern day graphics, modern day controls, modern day gameplay adjustments, that's just something that would be awesome. Somebody in the chat, I think it was Toolman, mentioned Dead Space, something like that. Special games remake properly is something awesome, and Microsoft is or should definitely do something like that, because Sony has shown that this kind of remakes really work in the console space.
Yeah, and here's the thing. They don't have an Xbox Game Pass, and that is something that, again, that's a part of the conversation, because risk versus how much they, risk versus reward. Let's just say, what are we spending this money on? Are we going to see a return of investment? That is obviously the biggest question in any business. Even though Microsoft has $2 billion, $2 trillion, I should say, they're not looking to throw any money away, but they don't have to, because again, because of Xbox Game Pass, it allows for the conversation to be had that, listen, we don't have to bank on the sale of the game. We just have to bank on the people subscribing. And when you put classic game, I've seen it 10 times already. Jet Set Radio. I understand that is a Sega IP, but this is what you do. You license Sega. You make a second party deal with Sega to remake Jet Set Radio, which was of course launched on the OG Xbox, that saw life on the Dreamcast, right? And we know that they have a great relationship. That game would move sales numbers in regards to subscriptions, and that's what you ultimately want to do. And again, a title like a Conquer, they don't have enough family type platformers in there. The same way they don't have fighters, the same way they don't have flights.
Did you just refer to Conquer as a family?
Well, I mean, not really. I didn't say Conquer.
Yeah, we better use Banjo as an example here.
Banjo is a better example, but I like that, Josh. That was a good catch on that. Josh, let me ask your opinion on this. Look, again, this is just listen, folks. When there's not a lot of news and you want to be entertained for 2 hours, sometimes you got to kind of, call an audible. And this is one of those topics that I saw posted in my timeline, and I thought it was a very valid conversation going versus, Bluepoint, which we know from the leak that they're eventually going to be SIE first party. For you, Josh, would you like to see Microsoft invest potentially in a studio that's just dedicated to bringing back older IP, so they don't have to pull talent from a Rare or from a Ninja Theory or the Gears of War makers? What are your thoughts on this?
The answer is absolutely yes, please. I'm going to take you guys back 19 years. All right.
Nice.
19
like it.
years ago, almost to the day, I was saving pennies and buying a second Sony Trinitron CRT and a second Xbox,
Wow.
so that my wife and I could play Crimson Skies on our own screen, so
That
it would not have
is
to be split screen.
dope, dude.
Yeah. So the moment you mention Crimson Skies, my ears perk, because like I would be
What an incredible title and
it-
a fantastic IP.
completely. And I believe Crimson Skies is actually the sequel. I think there was a game before it as well. And so the thing that I think would not only get a studio like you're mentioning, but make it a free to play game and give it a season pass.
Dude, you have hit the nail on the please elaborate on what that would do.
It is a game that like it just lends it's the multiplayer is so fun.
It's great.
It is so fun. And could you imagine just in today's the way the games are designed now and the ideas that could be used for Crimson Skies, like massive, like 50 versus 50 dogfights, right?
Dude.
Like just
what I mean, look, here's another one. Here, how about
Goosebumps
this?
already?
Yeah, no. I'm gonna make the goosebumps and doots even more. What if you're dog fighting, right? It's 12 people on a map. You're all dog fighting, and a world event happens where like a giant blimp. Everyone has to band together to take this down, kind of like in Destiny when they have those. I'm getting goosebumps, folks. And this is the kind of stuff that you could bring to a free-to-play game. It does have a story, and again, very Indiana Jones-esque, if you will. If that was done with modern controls, modern graphics, it would be something to be marveled, at least in my opinion. But Josh, please continue.
Yeah, it's the game is just so much fun. And I think I may have mentioned it on here before, maybe not. But back in the day, you'd get a ranking in Crimson Skies. You'd get a single star, a 2-star, 3-star, 4-star, and 1 large star.
Yes.
And people in Xbox Live voice chat would always ask, how do you get the star? And I would always reply, you have to hit BFA as fast as possible. And they would make them leave the lobby. You would see half the people leave the lobby because I would just troll. And they'd come back and they're like, it didn't work. I'm like, you didn't do it fast enough. And half of them would leave again, right? It was just, and we would all laugh. This was a nightly occurrence. And so Crimson Skies is just one of many, right? There are so many other titles that like, just give us that multiplayer experience. Try it. Right? See how it goes. If it doesn't last, then stop supporting the pass and move on. But I believe with in here's what I see. Here's what I hope is that when Nintendo is healthy, Nintendo gets weird. This has kind of been a weird year for Nintendo where they've put out games like the Doki what is it, like the book reading club or so, I can't even remember because I'm just not interested in these titles, right? But with a healthy Xbox, hopefully that means like they can take more risks and take some risks on some of the, and hopefully they understand that there is a community here that's very interested in the nostalgia that comes along with some of the classic games. Like we don't just love Halo and we don't just love Gears and Fable and all those things. Like we loved Crimson Skies.
Yeah.
That was just one of, I don't know. I mean, if you look back at those days, like you got games like Brute Force and there's so many Mech Assault, right? Could you imagine Mech Assault?
Yeah, it's funny because people ask Phil all the time about that, and he came out and said the reason why they haven't brought Mech Assault back because he wants to bring it back, but he said that right now the IP is messy. Like who owns this and who owns that? Because a Mech Assault is almost a guarantee. Hell, I would even dare say, and I've been saying this for a while, it's great that we have a Forza Horizon. It's great that we have a motorsport. But who doesn't want to see Project Gotham return as the third one? Like that would be, again, these are older IPs, and I know that Microsoft owns a lot of them. And Crimson Skies is one of them. Conquer, Banjo, Cameo. There's a Brute Force. I know a lot of people didn't dig that game. It was
Viva
awesome.
Pinata, Boom. Viva Pinata. You and I bring that up all the time.
I'm glad you brought it up because that's a great thing. That was trending, folks, because it had touch controls. Viva Pinata, the thing is old as dirt, but that's a game that could work in 2021 and beyond. But let's get VJ's a final opinion on this. We're going to get to the big one of the show, and Pong, I'm glad you're here because this is one of those opinions that is going to be vast. Everyone has a different opinion. My brother and I don't even disagree. We just totally disagree on this. But VJ, what are your thoughts on Microsoft themselves creating a studio to cater to older IPs outside of what they're making in? And again, I'm not taking away anything from what they're doing with Fable, what they're doing with Perfect Dark. I get it. Those are two big ones. They're going to do it. That's great. But for me, it's not enough. And maybe I'm being a greedy SOB, and that's fine. Where do you feel on a studio dedicated like Bluepoint for bringing back older IP?
It was so funny you mentioned Jet Set Radio Future because it was mentioned last night on Midweek Gaming and it received lots of loving and affectionate, heart-shaped oohs and ahs from hairy grown men. So yeah, I think it would be a great if we'd ever see the return of that title. And but we talk about points of convergence, Boom, what each of the companies are doing and looking at each other and where they're failing, where they're succeeding, and points of convergence are inevitable. And that's why I always say, regardless of what Xbox is doing, you can see on the trajectory that they're on, there's always going to be scope for improvement, right? At Xbox, and given the amount of feature promise that they continually sort of deliver on a quarterly basis in terms of what's to come, it feels like the sky's the limit, and you don't feel shy about asking them or telling them what you would like to see, in the future. And I think someone mentioned Nintendo. I mean, if you look at Sony and especially Nintendo, they are masters at generating and retaining awareness and revenues from recycling and remastering or remaking and aggressively licensing, I would say, existing and intellectual property. And I was a little disappointed with Battletoads. I think it needed another 6 months of development in order to sort of tune and balance, and of course it needed the implementation of multiplayer. My guess is that if Xbox feel the engagement and the audience is there, and they desire to offer remakes to the community at large, then I think they'll do it wholeheartedly. So I guess the short answer is yes, they should, but as long as sort of I mentioned Battletoads isn't the sort of blueprint. I was going to say Bluepoint there, but isn't the blueprint, and instead serves as an acute reminder as to how not to go about the process of delivering on potential promise or rebirthing projects, as you mentioned. Then I think we'll be in safe hands. And I think it was the Welsh chap, the Elusive Gamer, on the show last week, was it, Boom, alongside everyone else. And he was suggesting and hoping and petitioning for a few Japanese games that were created by Sakaguchi-san over at Mistwalker to perhaps to be remade. And I would welcome this approach very much. And I think Yakuza Kiwami 1 and 2 are really are a godsend. And they serve as, for me, as an immaculate and honorable example of how remakes should be managed and delivered with significant night versus day visual upgrades, along with many others upgrades leading the way. And I know, and the reason why I mentioned that, because Pong mentioned about, look, it's got to make business sense as well. And I completely agree with him. And I know that the business plan or the business case, or a business case for that matter, needs to make sense before committing resources to a long-term endeavor. But I think it's what we've already seen, it's an important part of Nintendo and Sony's strategy. So why not Microsoft's? That's the question, I guess.
Yeah.
But the other reason why I mentioned Yakuza Boom is the Yakuza remakes came at a time when the IP was less known, less familiar, or less engaged with amongst gamers than some of the ones that we're mentioning now that clearly stood the test of time. And if you've got plans to remake a game and sort of revitalize the IP longer term as well, remember, there's and I guess I'm just echoing what Josh has said, is that there is a huge audience in Game Pass that have not experienced older IPs and are not gaming connoisseurs like Box and Bear, and whose imaginations are not engaged by older visual styles and slightly clunky, or well, that might be unfair, Boom, or unwieldy controls, right? In terms of how polished they are as each and every year, right? That game controls and are finessed. And we had a fantastic discussion yesterday on Midweek Gaming with Stubbs, Cerebral Paul, and Ghostbuster in regards to game preservation and how Game Pass may help identify what and how historical IPs are engaged with by Xbox team or studios, and perhaps can be remade for the platform is definitely going to be something worth investigating for sure. And you would imagine that the team over at Xbox have had this meeting and discussion. It's not just us, right?
Right.
At more than one point in time, and we, the populace or the mass populace that support Xbox, just haven't heard what the bottom line is or was, right? And hopefully, 25 million subscribers by, I don't know, some heavenly messianic miracle will download Banjo-Kazooie this weekend, right? And which will in turn send a clear and divine message to Phil and company as to what needs to happen next. Just to finish off, I know of one very important and influential podcast host who resides on the East Coast that I think that would surely be extremely happy with this sort of outcome. But anyway, that's just me done.
Well, I mean, look, here's the thing. Again, we have seen more times than not Sony and Nintendo celebrate where they came from. This is not a dig at all at Microsoft saying that they don't, because they are bringing back Fable and they're bringing back Perfect Dark. And honestly, whoever would have thought they would bring back Perfect Dark? So I'm happy as a gamer because we are getting older IPs done in new ways. The new Fable is going to retain its charm from from its original trilogy, but it's going to be done in a modern way. Perfect Dark looks like, obviously, it's keeping the first person perspective when we thought it was going to be otherwise, and it's going to be a more serious spy thriller that's going to have a lot of again, I can't say that the alien thing that they had in the original is going to return or it's not, because we don't know much about the game.
Elvis?
I mean, he very well could return. But with that said, there's still a market for it. And again, we have to bring Xbox Game Pass into the conversation because of that service. It allows Microsoft to be a little bit more risky with certain investments because, again, they're not trying to sell the said game to make back said money that they spent. What they're trying to do is add to the service, which they have done in a way that no one ever would have thought. I mean, they still sell it as a service that gives you 100 games, when we know for a fact that right now there's over 400. So they're underselling it, and people are, flocking to it in a big way. I have a very strange suspicion that by the Game Awards, we're getting an announcement that they have surpassed 30 million. And again, that's not even going out of the range of, holy cow, they did it. That's just going based on the 1 million per month that they're averaging. So it's going to be a big deal. But listen, let me catch up on a few of the super chats. And we have a new channel member. I want to thank Sleepy Goblin 2D. Thanks a lot for joining the channel. Once again, definitely appreciate that. Pardon me. And Drawn TJ drops an additional $5 super chat and says, I wish they would remake Midtown Madness 3. Dude, that was a dope game. That wouldn't be a bad remake at all. But again, if not to be selfish, if you're going to remake a racing game, you got to bring back Project Gotham 1, and let's, why not have a third racer that you can just, have one, like the Call of Duty guys, they have multiple teams. There's new Call of Duty. They give 2 years to work on it. I don't know. It sounds crazy, but I would definitely be into it. Raiden Blade, generous friend of the show, he drops. Very generous. Oh my God. He says, $20 super chat says Burning Rangers is the only remake I want. Dude, that was old school. That was one of the last Saturn games made, dude. Oh my God. Burning Rangers was way ahead of its time. Xbox buy Sega and make everyone happy. Unleash their IPs. People have to remember that many game codes are missing. So remakes, remasters have may have a little issue. Yeah, this is where it comes into the game preservation conversation, how important it is to have these games available. And again, I think that the remake thing or remaster thing is seen it's seen its welcome. I like the Resident Evil 2 remake approach. Make something old new again and make it even better than the original. That's when you have me. Lord Roughness, good generous friend of the show, he drops a $5 super chat and says the Xbox controller doesn't need any gimmicks while playing multiplayer competitive games. It's great as it is. Well, it's funny you should talk about that, because that is where we're going to move to right now. And Pong, I'm happy that you have you here. Now look, here's the thing. Joe is not here. He could potentially pop in. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. We'll see. But I am going to talk about the final topic. And I say final, folks. I mean, we're only an hour and 15 into the show. We still have 45 minutes. But, folks, this is one of those topics that is going to be heavily debated. It's going to have a tremendous amount of opinions attached to it. There could be some emotion shown behind it. I say temper your expectations. I don't work for Microsoft. I'm not changing your controller. But I do want to talk about what needs and what could potentially come. Now, when talking about the modern day controller, folks, many in this community will argue that the Xbox One controller is the perfect weight, size, and button layout. And I wouldn't argue, folks. I have 15 controllers, and 4 of them are elites. So I'm in the controller business. As a matter of fact, I have just made my own Banjo-Kazooie controller, and that will be here the first week of August. But, on October 27th of 2015, Microsoft did something that we have seen in the private sector of custom, high expensive controllers, $200 controllers and your scuff controllers, right? We haven't seen it very often in the Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox eras prior. But they released the Elite controller for $150. And honestly, they shocked the gaming world. Turns out, folks, that the Elite, outside of some rubber grip issues coming unglued, it was probably the best gaming controller I've personally ever used. And in 2019, well, they made some changes to the Elite 1.0 by releasing the 2.0. And of course, they made it better. No more, rubber grips coming off of it. They changed the internal battery thing that a lot of people didn't like, but it was a much better controller than the original. Now, with the release of the Xbox Series X and S controllers, the standard controllers, more upgrades came to already in what I consider the world's best controller. That included texture grips on both the triggers and the bumpers, the hybrid D-pad, and the dedicated share button, which we've seen last generation for Sony. Microsoft finally caught up and added that, which is a big deal, especially when you want to take pictures and throw it up on the socials. I do it all the time. But now I want to move into the discussion of what I think is going to be one of the most controversial topics that we talk about on the Xbox Factor podcast in 2021, and that is what potentially could come to the Elite 3.0 controller, and I think it should have it. Now, you've seen in the chat, my brother dropped the super chat. He disagrees 100%. Not saying he's wrong or right. He loves his Elite, and he uses it to the best visibility. Just watch him play Destiny. He's an ace, straight up. But I kind of got to bring PlayStation to the conversation because I happen to really like the Dual Sense. I think that there is something to be said about haptic triggers. I think there's something to be said about the way that controller was made. And I'm going to be honest with you. The PlayStation controls that came before it for PlayStation 1 through 4 were shit. Okay? The PlayStation 3 controller, the worst controller in the history of controllers with those angled trigger buttons. They were horrendous. The 6-axis was a joke. It didn't work. The PlayStation 4 controller, though slightly better, still not my jam. I really enjoy the offset analog sticks. We know they're never going to change to that. You have to buy a third party if you want to do that. But then we have to move into what happened with the PlayStation 5. Now, the PlayStation 5 itself is an ugly system. It's so ugly that I had to go out and buy a piece of furniture to hide it, because Mrs. Boomstick was like, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't ever give you a crap about anything. That is horrendous looking, and it's an eyesore. She's not lying. The thing is, it's gross. It's gross looking, and that's the bottom line.
It's just popping its color.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Pop it somewhere else, but don't do it in the Boomstick household, because Mrs. Boom says nay. But we got to talk about the Dual Sense controller. Now, granted, do I think the Dual Sense is better than the Elite 2.0 or even the standard Xbox Series X and S? The answer is I do not. I like everything about the S and X controller. The standard controller the weight is perfect, the size is perfect. I like the trigger grips. It's has the offset. It has everything I need. But with that said, one of the things that we talk about in gaming is that there is a premium experience. King David, if he was here, would tell you that a premium experience is for the upper echelon of gamers who invest heavily into their hobby. And whether that be you're a PC elitist, whether you have the best headset that money could buy for your PlayStation or your Xbox, or you go out and you buy $180 Elite 2.0, whatever your case may be, there is a market for it. And even though we have no idea what the Elite 3.0 controller is going to look like or contain, I got to bring up the conversation that Phil Spencer, head of Xbox, had at Kinda Funny. And this, I pulled the article from good friends of this program, the VGC, VideoGameChronicles.com. And here is what Phil Spencer had to say on the matter of the PlayStation 5 Dual Sense. We're definitely thinking about different kinds of devices that could bring more games to more places. There's probably some work that we'll do on the controller. I think Sony has done a nice job with their controller, and we kind of look at some of that, and there are things that we should go and do. Now, is he immediately suggesting that he's going to add chocolate to your peanut butter and ruin your life? Well, no, he's not saying that at all. He is suggesting that he has heard many people in this community, whether you agree or disagree, that the PS5 Dual Sense is a marvel in itself, and it does a lot of really great things. All you have to do is play Astrobot. Now, I'm not saying we should be blowing into our controllers. I think that's stupid. I think it's dumb. We don't need to do that. But there are certain things that have been added to the DualSense that I really like and would love to see, especially the haptic triggers. I really do dig that. And I think that would be a nice subtle addition to the 3.0 on top of everything it already has. Pong, you're our guest. Got to bring you in on the conversation. Where do you fall on the PS5 DualSense or the Xbox Series and or 3.0 Elite getting some PS5 DualSense additions? Where do you fall on that?
Well, I fall probably closer to your brother Neo Mento. I'm not against innovation in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's always good to be pushing forward, and it's always good to recognize, even if it's a competitor, when they do something good and implementing those features in to whatever it is, whatever your hardware is or your content is. So I don't have a problem with innovation. Where I have a problem is that, number one, my biggest issue is why keep adding more features when you can't even fix what's currently wrong with the hardware itself. So when we're talking about controllers, my biggest issue is stick drift. If you're going to spend all this money and engineer new features, whether it be haptics or whatever the case may be, why are you not spending the engineering money into figuring out why you can't build a controller that doesn't develop stick drift? So I would rather have them focus all their efforts, and this goes across everybody. This is Nintendo, this is Xbox, this is PlayStation, to fix what you currently have first before you keep putting in more options, which also creates the opportunity for more problems. And that's where I fall in. Second, my next biggest concern is that you're splitting your player base when you offer this as an option to some but not to others, and then you're asking developers to develop for these options which are not going to be used by the majority. It's going to be used by the minority, because let's face it, most people don't go out and spend the money on the elite, myself included. So the deal is that it's fine if you want to do it. I'm not going to sit here and tell any company they can't go ahead and innovate and put in all these options and they see it being used elsewhere and really like it and go ahead and do that. But again, I want it to remain an option. And if you're going to do that, then you again split your player base. And that for me is the biggest issue. Now, if this had been something they decided to do at the beginning of the generation and they had gone forward and looked at Sony and they probably knew what they were putting into their controller and said, hey, we want to do this too, and went ahead and did it, fine. But now you've already got a player base out there with the regular controllers. Now you're going to introduce this in some form or fashion. And if it's in the elite, okay, that's fine. But again, that's going to be a small percentage of people taking advantage of it. And then you've also got the other people who are still going to buy the elite and never use that option like I would. Again, for me, I don't get immersion through my hands. I turn off vibration off of most controllers. Certain games, I will use it just as a little warning thing. When they use it in that manner, when I can tell something's, approaching or whatever the case may be. But for the most part, I'm going to turn it off because it annoys me more than anything. Or I'm so immersed in what's visually in front of me and what I'm hearing that I don't even notice it. So for me, it's a take it or leave it kind of deal. I really want them to focus on the issues that they have to perfect the controllers. And I know there's no such thing as perfection, especially when it comes to technology. You're always going to have issues, but the stick drift to me is the main problem. And they still have not fixed that. There are class action lawsuits out there against it, and they still don't put the time and effort into fixing it in one way or another. Now, I've heard Xbox may have switched companies, because I know at one point, I believe all of them, Nintendo, Sony, and Xbox, were using the same manufacturer for the controller parts as far as the sticks go. I think Xbox may have now shifted away from that company due to the fact that there is a class action lawsuit. And I hope that's the case, but they got to do more. We got to figure something out about that. And again, I understand. I'm not expecting a lifetime, a controller to last me a lifetime. And obviously everybody uses their controllers differently. I'm light, what I would consider light on my controllers. I do not throw controllers. I do not hack on controllers, and I still wind up with stick drift. So for me, that's case number one. Fix that first, then come talk to me about adding these other features that you want to move forward with. So I guess, boom, at the end of the day, they're going to do what they want to do. Phil sees, obviously, he mentioned it out loud, so he sees that there is some positive, things to come from adding these kind of features. So who am I to tell him not to do it? But I just wish they would focus more on the other aspects and get those down before they add these extra features. That's where I stand.
I mean, listen, you make a lot of sense, and I know that my brother in the chat is smiling. He also said he hates me, which he really doesn't. He's lying. But of course he does. He's full of it. Listen, to be honest, I like the way you approached it. The stick drift is a problem. They should fix that. No doubt about that. But you know what, Boxenberger, let's get your opinion on this. This is a highly debatable topic. Again, I'm happy with my controller, so much so that I just did another design lab. So it's going to be my 16th controller. I only have two hands, so I like controllers, but I also do like what they did with the Dual Sense. For you, would you like to see anything be added that's currently available? Because you have a PlayStation 5, you've enjoyed it quite a bit. Would you like to see any of that functionality come to, of course, an Xbox controller, whether that be the standard or the Elite for that matter?
Okay. that really depends on about which functionality we are talking about, because the DualSense has a couple of functionalities that the Xbox controller doesn't have. It has the built-in speaker, it has the built-in microphone, and I sure hope they don't adopt with those kind of features. I don't like the speaker, I don't like the mic, I have it turned off all the time, and I hate when my controller suddenly makes sounds during a gaming session. I just don't like that. But Boom, I'm with you. The DualSense is probably the best controller Sony has ever made. I didn't particularly like the DualShock 4, to be honest. That controller just felt
It was
cheap.
awful.
Yeah,
it was
just
awful.
felt like one of the toys of my kids. Yeah,
Yeah.
in my hand. It didn't have that quality feeling in your hand, and that has definitely changed with the DualSense 5. And I do like the rumble functions and the adaptive triggers and stuff. That is a great feature, and it's always easy to say now, oh, I want that in my Xbox controller as well. But we kind of have to consider here a couple of things. The first is, of course, we still don't know really about durability of these rumble functions, and
that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, the console is out in the field for what now? 9 months, 10 months. It's really, we don't have that kind of data yet. Whether that's a durability feature, and if I have put it in an Elite controller, you could argue both ways. On the one hand, you could say, okay, in that more expensive controller, they could build in even higher quality components, so durability should be even better. But then it's just more functionality and more can go wrong. And I don't want to have my €180 controller bricked because of a rumble function. Yeah, so that is definitely something we need to consider here. And then we have to think about what is the trade-off for it, because those functions cost money, and that means that they will have to reduce the costs on other parts in the controller. And Pong just mentioned it. I never had an issue with the stick drift, but I know people have it. So in the end, it's always a business case. Yeah, you put in another some functionality in the rumble function, you have to take the money out of another function that is in the controller, and that's probably a function that is used a little bit more than that haptic feedback, because that's my next point. In how many games would we see it if the base controller does not support it? There is this very small percentage of Elite controller owners that could potentially use it, and from those few percent of Elite controller owners, half of those will turn it off and not use it, because it will be optional. I know so many people who turned the DualSense haptic controllers off, especially when it comes to competitive games. I know nobody who plays with that haptic feedback in a competitive game. So we have to really consider that how many games would we actually get where that function is implemented for that very, very small percentage of gamers who would have or own that Rumble Elite 3 controller. And when you consider all that, I don't know if it really makes sense for them. I could see it happening when they put it in the actual base controller, so that just the install base is bigger out there, because then you have an install base, also a considerable install base also for third-party developers. Yeah, because right now we see it on the PlayStation. It's mainly the first-party studios or exclusives that take advantage of that feature properly. And of course, if both consoles, Sony and Microsoft, would have it, third-party publishers would be more interested. But then again, same point with durability and quality of the function. If you put it in the base controller, you can't use expensive components. You have to use cheap components. And so it always comes back to that trade-off. And yeah, I know I talked a lot, but it really is a trade-off. And I think if I think about an Elite 3 controller, as much as I love these rumble functions, I'd rather see them improve on other durability things, implement now the share button. That's my main reason why I don't use my Elite anymore, to be honest. I miss the share button.
Yeah.
but yeah, there's a lot that they can do with an Elite 3 controller, and I don't know if it would justify the costs that they put in that controller with additional rumble functions for that very small install base later.
I mean, again, everyone's making perfect sense here, and I know my brother's doing the dance in the aisle, which is great. Good on you, Dan. But let's bring in Josh. Josh, listen, everyone makes great points, and again, I have to put it out there that I'm not saying that I want Microsoft to do Sony things and Sony to do Microsoft things. Well, I want Sony to do Microsoft things in regards to Game Pass. They never will because they're just, they are who they are. But in regards to the controller, do you want to see any changes come in the form of Dual Sense-esque type of additions to whether it be the standard Series X and S controller or the Elite 3.0?
I'm gonna I don't know if I'm playing devil's advocate or if I kind of just sit in both camps. Okay, because if you have somebody that's playing things very competitive, typically they're going to turn rumble off, they're going to turn off a lot of the gimmick stuff, they're going to throw their trigger stops on their Elite controller.
I have that when I play competitively. I'm sorry if I'm letting people take behind the curtain, but I have the half pull triggers.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I play a lot of shooters. I'm staring at my Elite Series 2 right now. I've got my extended stick on the right stick, and I use my bumpers. You know what I mean? Like, I love that stuff. That being said, remember when the Xbox One came out, the rumble in the triggers was kind of the thing, right? So you could feel the rumble of the car when we were playing Forza, and the rumble of your machine gun, that kind of thing. All fun. Sometimes the rumble was a little much, and it would honestly kind of tickle my fingertips, and it was just kind of whatever. So I like options, right? And I have a friend, co-host on one of my podcasts. The PlayStation with the DualSense, I mean, he went from an Xbox One X to the PlayStation. He doesn't even know when he's going to get a Series X. Not because he doesn't want to play Xbox games, just because he doesn't have time. But he's loving the DualSense. He loves the immersion that it helps, right? My neighbor recently had me come over. I sat down in a game chair that was mounted with a steering wheel, a kicker, gas pedals, right? The whole deal. Sitting right in front of a 42-inch TV with the sound bar and subwoofers and everything. It was all about immersion, right? Like that's how he played games. I don't even know if he really went online. It was more like just time trials. And I mean, seriously, you go outside when he's playing, it sounds like there's like the like NASCAR is just going crazy in his house, And so there are those gamers that they don't necessarily just throw on the gaming headset and start sweating to the oldies in competitive. They're out there enjoying their single player experiences and having the triggers that make it feel more like you're firing a real weapon, or giving making puzzles different, or just anything that can make it more just increase the immersion. I'm all about it. I think for me there were two semi disappointments firing up the Series X: the UI and the controller, because it didn't feel like anything had changed. It just
outside of the share button.
Outside of the share button, right? And then when I go back to I'm always playing on my Elite Series 2. There was it kind of felt like a faster Xbox One. There wasn't that oh, this is a fresh new feeling. It's just, oh, okay, it's more of the same. It's a minor gripe, right? It's just that's all it is. So I
may
like the
may
idea.
I jump in here
Yeah, please.
quickly, because it's funny you say that. I was actually really surprised by the Series X controller when I hold it for the first time in my hand, because I was expecting exactly your experience. Yeah, nothing has changed except the share button, but I really was surprised by how good the D-pad felt. It felt even better than on my Elite controller. Still love the D-pad, the new one. I thought the little grip on the triggers really changed the feeling of the controller and the size. It just feels a little bit more comfortable than the Xbox One controller to me. So I was actually kind of surprised by how different it felt.
You're not wrong at all. And to be fair, I fired up my Series X and grabbed my Elite Series 1 because I needed my bumpers for when I was jumping into my shooters or my the paddles, right? So I didn't actually touch the Series X controller for probably 3 weeks.
Wow.
And because I needed my paddles. That's what I was used to playing with. And then I went to the Elite Series 2 shortly after. And so I do agree. The controller feels great. The D-pad is nice and clicky. Like I like all that stuff. Don't get me wrong. But when it's the same look and that's kind of what I'm getting. And like I said, it's a minor gripe. Like it's not, and then you've also got the issue of the Dual Sense wearing out relatively quick, right? You start adding more components, things are going to start breaking. And the moment I had to buy a used Elite Series 2. The moment I got it, it had stick drift. Now I got it with Prime so that I could send it back. But for $30 on eBay, I found a guy that replaced everything so that it's a brand new controller. Worked great.
Wow.
But because of those, you get more moving components like the DualSense, you're going to have issues like that we're going to run into. So I'm all for the immersion. I think it's great, especially in those single player, like real cinematic experiences. But when you're getting competitive and really wanting to take your game to the next level, you probably don't want to deal with, he was talking about how Call of Duty, you're trying to fire a light machine gun and you have to really pull hard on that trigger to get it to fire. Like, I don't necessarily want to deal with that in multiplayer. For story games, sure.
Yeah, no, great point. Real quick, before we get to VJ, to close out the topic, and again, this is a highly, highly debated topic. The chat's going crazy. I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to announce the 3 winners for the Christmas in July Part 2 Scrub Nurse, who suffered a bike injury. Well, guess what? This is going to make the boo-boo feel better. You won $100 gift card, my brother. Ooh. And I will be sending that to you as soon as the show ends. And the $50 gift card comes to talented MF Diego Primero is got the $50 gift card, and Jason Hatchett gets the $25 Xbox gift card. And I will be sending it as soon as the show is done. Check your DMs, and I'll be reaching out to you momentarily. But VJ, closing out this very debatable topic, where do you fall on, PlayStation having, the DualSense controller, and a lot of people really enjoying it? Do you feel Xbox needs to, bring some of that functionality to their controllers, whether that be the standard or the Elite 3.0?
I just wanted to address one of Pong's points in regarding to ongoing issues, if I may. I think if you look at controllers, cars, tablets, or washing machines, or whatever electronics you've got, like many other modern devices, they're all being heavily invested into R&D level, right down to components. And unfortunately, unlike the 50s and 60s, modern day appliances are designed for timely obsolescence. It's a poor and impoverished practice amongst all corporations, and I would hope that if something that comes out of these lawsuits is that changes to manufacturing processes and as Box and Bear said, durability are addressed, but most likely best not to hold your breath, right, in this instance. And it's probably cost effective to manage a potential lawsuit, which has already been, from my experience, factored in as a contingency into the initial cost of of production and so on and so forth. But anyway, go figure. In terms of your question, Boom, I don't think we should be quick to dismiss or omit a dual sense type or even an evolutionary controller for Xbox, which I guess the question is, why would you want to stem expression, progress, and creativity? Again, going back to Pong Soul's point. For me, I just want to reiterate a few points I've already made a few times in the past, that if you lead the way, you're going to provide guidance for those that follow. Microsoft are doing it to Sony, Sony are doing it to Microsoft, and Nintendo are doing it to both of them, and vice versa. So my other point has always been in relation to convergence, which is inevitability, right, at some point in time. And here is another profound example or juxtapost where we're finding ourselves at, right, where, and I think that going forward, there's going to be many, many more that we venture into the future, and that are going to be hot topics for this sort of show. And you can see this, and it just popped in my head with the recent PS5 and Xbox Series X hardware being released. Right, they're not astonishingly different, especially when you go back and compare a couple of generations ago. You know, the contrast in technical engineering approaches between the Xbox 360 and PS3. Convergence isn't an inevitability, especially if it makes commercial sense. And I remember that when we'd first heard of the DualSense, and at that time I was more prevalent on Twitter, which I'm not these days. People were asking, why are Sony increasing, an already potentially heavy, cost of production or build cost or BOM cost, and offering this much larger looking device, right? Because I don't have a PS5 Boom, so you'll have to attest to the size of the.
It's a slightly bigger controller. Yeah. It has a little bit more weight for it, for sure. It definitely feels quality.
So in turn, given the cost of materials and components, is obviously going to be costing more, and at the time it was also seen by some outlets as a marketing gimmick, prior to its launch. And I have to again take a macro approach to this. I believe that every object, tool, device, or item, regardless of controllers, has its potential use. It comes down to creative developer, whether you're a developer or a plumber or even a carpenter, right? Whoever comes along who is bright enough and can implement or make or find a use for a seemingly benign or innocuous or dull object, right, item or gadget, until it's not. So I think for Phil, I understand what he said, and he won't be obviously making the decision alone. And when he does make the final call, it should also be, for my opinion, partially, based in terms of a compassionate decision or a kind decision, as well as a business one, as well as that offers, if he goes ahead with it, or whatever they plan to go ahead with, because who knows what they've got, going on in the R&D department, that it offers more options and future potentiality for his developers and studios, first party and second party and third party, and diversity first and foremost. But unfortunately, sometimes, I don't know, I don't mean to sound rude, but unfortunately, far too many of us think of gaming as an exclusive club rather than a joy and a gift that should be shared and expanded upon. In these cases, I don't think Xbox have just jumped and said, straight out the bat that we're going to make this. Is that I think they're wise to the fact that it's not always a corporation's decision, right? Sometimes the wiser approach is to query a crowd. The wisdom of crowds, in my opinion, in certain cases shouldn't be underestimated. And it will also be a question, perhaps several questions too, as I've mentioned, just leaned into just a little bit, to all of Xbox internal producers and studios in order to arrive at a sensible consensus. I'm sure Sony and Nintendo, when they're designing, some of their new concepts or products that actually hit the market, have gone through these processes. So if and when, is it haptics or whatever, or other technically advanced controller mechanisms are going to be designed or in design, and inevitably, developed into a commercial product, then, they will have plans for it, you would assume, right? Rather than just being a reactionary counter to whatever Sony and Nintendo are doing. And if Xbox, perhaps don't want to make this, right? There's nothing stopping a third-party partner that's proficient in making controllers or other accessories. And we've seen that with Microsoft partner. Was it with Seagate for the expansion card and so on and so forth? So that might be on the cards, right? We don't know, right? And Microsoft, maybe Phil knows, look, we've got something in cooking in the background, but it's not us. It's a third party that has come up with something, and we're probably going to give them a license to produce it, right? So, in terms of my sort of mentioning another point, which was in terms of convergence, is Sony and Nintendo are seemingly, just looking at them, right, taking a long-term view on subscription-based models where consumers can, pay a fee to download and play games, especially first-party titles on day of launch. In this instance, Xbox are leading and providing guidance to those two, right? So it is going around the roundabouts more and more often, than ever in the past. But obviously, Xbox, I think that will do it, and this is why I think it perhaps might be longer term before we see something, is that it will definitely coincide with certain games that are perhaps in development within first party to sort of coincide with some sort of commercial launch. And as I say, at some point in the next 5 to 10 years, all three companies, depending on how successful their content pipeline is, which I think is first and foremost, is as gamers, what we should be concerned about, will offer very similar hardware accessories, be it controllers or VR headsets and accessibility options. And I guess the question that's kind of in my mind, shouldn't improving the world with options, diversity and opportunities as a whole not be the ultimate goal? And I'm pretty sure that that's what we agreed on last week in terms of even just the accessibility topic that we were discussing in relation to Cerebral Paul. So anyway, I've just thrown some nonsense out there, Boom. So I hope some of that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense, and everyone had great takes on it. Pong, Boxer Bear, Josh, and of course yourself. And again, great conversation. One that I think we're going to be returning to when we see the Elite 3.0, whenever that's announced. People are waiting for it. People enjoy their 2.0, which I have, and it is a fantastic controller. But real quick, we got to get Boxer Bear out of here because obviously he's going to the midweek mix-up birthday bash, which I'll be dropping in about 10 minutes. I'm only going to spend 10 minutes in there because Mrs. Boom is off. We're on vacation together, and I just wanted to go and show my support. But real quick, DeAndre Banks drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, hopefully Crimson Skies makes a return. Indeed, my brother. Andre De Leon drops a very generous $2 super chat and says, loving the show, Boom. How about, oh my God, Jade Empire remake? Yes, freaking please. That would be dope. Thanks for being here, brother. Thanks for the super chat. We had another one come in from, let's see, Frederick Williams drops a very generous $5 super chat and says this: I think there is zero chance Xbox doesn't add DualSense features to their next-gen controller, so I say they should get a jump on it now. And I agree. I think that there are R&Ding it right now as we speak. I want to thank all the super chats that came in. There was quite a few of them today. Thank you so much. And those super chats obviously help Mrs. Boomstick and I do these big giveaways. This one was not. This was straight out of her pocket. $350 she donated to make sure that we celebrated the community. And Boxer Bear, tell everyone about your new video, where they can reach out to you on social media, but how to subscribe to your YouTube channel.
Yeah, first, thanks again for having me on the show. I was glad to be back here today. Really missed it last week. So thanks for the awesome discussions. Yeah, and people can find me basically everywhere at Boxenberger, Twitter, Xbox, PlayStation, and of course here on YouTube. As you said, I just uploaded another video the other day about an analysis how Microsoft and Xbox changed the gaming industry over the course of the last years. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, definitely check the channel out. With my brand new PC, I can now put up videos in 4K 60 FPS, so at least they look good now. Yeah, and I'll be on the Midweek Mix-Up podcast right now in like 5 minutes. That's why I really have to leave now, because that's the podcast where I'm usually every Wednesday at 2 p.m. Eastern and 8 p.m. Central Europe time. That's podcast with mainly European content creators, and they are celebrating, or we are celebrating, our first anniversary today. And that's why we have a big anniversary show with like 23 guests coming in and out, just like you, Boom. And all the other big names in the podcasting scene, or most of them, are coming in today. So yeah, can't wait. And I have to move over to the other show. Thanks. And I see you guys next week.
Go take care of business, brother. And Pong Soul, let's grab you at it. Thank you so much for jumping in. Obviously, you saved the day once again. Always having a good voice and a positive voice to jump in is always great. Pong, tell everyone about where they can reach out to you on social media, where they can subscribe to your YouTube channel, and more importantly, tell them about you and I and your brother from another, I Still Rain, who has an incredible Saturday morning podcast at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Absolutely, Boom. Thank you so much for the invite. Hey, first of all, I just got to say, because this is a gaming podcast, I've had my one eye on the EA Play Live, and Battlefield 2042 just showed off their Portal, and it is its own version of Forge. This is going to be absolutely gigantic.
Yeah,
the things that people are going to come up with, I can't wait. I already was hyped for Battlefield, but my God, it looks good.
And they just announced the Battlefield we've all been waiting for.
Yes, absolutely. And they just announced Dead Space is coming back. So it's a great day for gamers, along with all the Game Pass content we just got. So, man, what an awesome Thursday. I'm sure we're going to be talking about a lot of this stuff going forward. But wow. But no, thanks for the invite, Boom. I'm glad I could jump in. Awesome to be on a show, obviously, with Archimedes. VJ, of course, again, I've looked up to you for so long, VJ. It's always great to be on a show with you, sir. And of course, N64 Josh, man, we've done a few podcasts now, man. It's awesome. I love the different opinions we get and the different thoughts and talks that we have here. And the chat was just absolutely on fire. You guys are out of control sometimes. You guys have some great ideas in there. So just great to be here. Going to be on the midweek mix-up birthday bash as well with Steel Rain. My brother from another Living Split Screen is going to be invading over there after this, so it's going to be fantastic. And then, of course, we've got, where are we, Thursday? So tomorrow is 2-Tab Friday. We got, so you got to hit me up on Xbox Ultimate with Fun Speculation, his amazing wife, Caitlin, and of course the rest of Magnificent 7, 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time. Come check us out there. Saturday mornings, like Boom already just talked about, Steel Rain and I, Living Split Screen, 10 a.m. Eastern, 9 o'clock Central Time, 3 p.m. UK time. Come check us out. Man, we are just growing and growing. Loving every week. We get just bigger and bigger, and everybody's been just amazing. So come check us out. Living Split Screen, all one word. Saturday nights on the Shot Podcast with PTK Blam, Centurion, Fuzzy Belvedere, and maybe Stay Gorilla. He's taking a little bit of break. We'll see if he comes back. But this week we've got 3-Bit is on. So my other brother is going to be on that show. So that's going to be fantastic. 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 o'clock Central Time. And of course, I'll be back here next Tuesday on Xbox Factor Podcast, of course, with Mr. Boomstick, Zemi Games, 3-Bit, myself, and who knows who else shows up. Mav's been here, and we had Steel on this week. So it's always a great time. But again, love you all. Play what you love what you play, and we'll be talking to you guys real soon.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for being here. Josh, let's get you on out of here, brother. Thank you so much for being here, giving your opinion, joining the panel as you did a couple of weeks ago. Tell everyone about what you got going on, where they can subscribe, and check out your new work that you got going on with the new podcast you just launched.
Yeah, just I started with a company called Beamable. We make an SDK for Unity. So if you're an indie dev, I honestly want to talk to you. So hit me up. My Twitter is at N64Josh. DMs are open. I would love to chat with you. The other things I got going on, I'm N64Josh everywhere. You can check out the YouTube. You can check out the Twitch. And then the Halo Infinite podcast is also everywhere. And we record live on Thursdays at 9 p.m. Pacific. So if you are a night owl, come hang out. We would love to see you. And we're very, very excited for Halo Infinite. So, and just thanks again, Boom, for having me. I love being here. I love the chat. It's so great.
Well, thanks for being here, brother. I'm glad to hear that you are doing good work in the community. And last and no way least, the linguist himself, VJ. Thank you so much for, of course, doing what you do on this show each and every week and schooling us on the way you know and how gaming goes. Tell everyone about where they can reach out to you on social media, brother. And what else you got going on?
Thanks, Boom. I was just going to say, great panel members and community in the chat today. Archimedes, Josh, and Pong Sol, who surely now holds the record for the longest outro. Apologies, apologies if my points of conversation may have been a little obscure and colourless today. I'll definitely aim to be better on the show next week. But you can find me on Midweek Gaming on Wednesdays right now, along with Stub, Cerebral Paul, Removable Sanity, Mr. Tushi, and Animated Evil, which I'm sure you guys are well aware of. Yeah, Boom, thanks for having me on. Have a great weekend, everyone, and hopefully see you next week.
Well, yeah, thanks for being here, brother. And of course, we want to wish everybody a very safe, enjoyable Thursday. Lots of gaming. Real quick, we only have 150 people here. Spread the word. There will not be a new episode of Breakfast with Boom tomorrow. I am taking the day off. Mrs. Boomstick and I are going to have an extended weekend. I will be back to producing that show next Friday morning. Hopefully we can get King David on and talk about whatever is going on in the world. But yes, just remember, no Breakfast with Boom tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are taking a break, and honestly, I need it. But listen, folks, thank you so much again for being here. Thank you for supporting Double Barrel Gaming in the biggest way. Congratulations to the 3 winners. I'll be getting your codes as soon as I'm done with jumping on the midweek podcast birthday special for 10 or 15 minutes. And I'll send those out to you to your DMs. So check your DMs. The codes are verified, so they're going to work no problem. And of course, thank you again for all the super chats. There were a ton of them today, and it's because of those super chats that we're able to do so many giveaways year round. And we will continue that as we get closer to the holidays. So take care, everyone. Enjoy gaming. And of course, I'm going to close out the show with something that's important to me. Hopefully one day it'll be important to you. And that's something that my dad taught us when we were kids. And he said, son, treat others how you want to be treated. Also, it doesn't cost anything to be nice. You live by those rules, and I can guarantee you, you're going to have an awesome day. So take care, everyone. We'll see you next week on the newest episode of the Xbox Factor Podcast.